Good evening, Melbourne, and good evening, Brendan, and welcome back to Sunday Night Live. If you're joining us, we've been having a few technical issues, as is our want here at Sunday Night Live, but we're here and we're persevering because we've got a full show in front of you. Brendan, how are you going over there?
I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Look, I'm loving it. Look, it's curfew's interesting, but we live with it, and I'm enjoying extra time with the family still. Feels much the same as the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, not too bad. So I'm obviously lucky here. So Joe and I can obviously be in the same room because we live in a little community here. So we whilst remaining sort of distant from each other, at least we have the support of a community here on the property here in Mount Waverley. So that is a little bit like a little family for me. They drive me crazy sometimes, but it's been wonderful because especially here on Melbourne Praise in particular, we've been able to continue praying with people, which has been a really important thing because I know lots of people have been feeling quite isolated and alone during this time. So in particular, uni students, and you're back at uni this week, Joe. What's uni been like this week?
Oh, I tell you what, it's pretty difficult getting back into the swing of things, but I reckon give me a couple of weeks and we'll be right to go. But yeah, everyone's been feeling it. I was just on youth group a couple of hours ago, and they're all feeling it as well. Back in the depths of online study. So
well, hey, they got a chance to. You were able for a little period of time there for youth group to do it in person, yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that was so good. Like I think we had like 4 sessions in person, and then I'd set up a retreat, and then that like Wednesday, like that following weekend, we're going to go on retreat, and then lockdown hit, and it was pretty devastating.
It makes it all the harder because it's like coming out of lockdown, you get the taste of like, man, this is what human interaction feels like, and then to have to go back into it. But I think, there's light at the end of the tunnel, so it means that I'll love it all the more when you get to come out.
It is, and I suppose it's I think we're all hoping that obviously this tough lockdown is going to sort of see an end to it, and that we're going to be able to come out at least on the other side sort of in some semblance of something a bit normal. So but there's been reasons to celebrate in the past week. Yesterday we celebrated the Feast of St. Mary of the Cross, Australia's first saint. So that's always a great reason to celebrate. And this year's the 10th anniversary since her canonisation. And I know that there's probably some people who are listening here who, as school students, went across to the canonisation in Rome 10 years ago. But I remember it quite fondly because it was the year that I was ordained as well. So, but it's great to have an Australian saint on the calendar that we can rejoice in and celebrate. Anything else exciting been happening for you?
No, I think the Feast of St. Mary Mackillop is about as exciting. Hey, no, that is a very exciting thing. She's our one and only saint.
She is at the moment.
Is there any on the charts? Like, have we got any blessed Australian saints? Australian people?
Eileen O'Connor.
Is she a blessed yet, or they're trying to get her to be a blessed soon? Perhaps it's coming. I think.
Ned Kelly. Maybe not. We'll leave him in his infamy. Hey, but there's been a good piece of news, a fresh piece of news that's lit up my week.
So you're trying to get me off guard while I'm here in the background trying to keep. I'm like pedaling underwater to keep this podcast sort of going live to air, and you're trying to catch me off guard. You're trying to sneak this in under the covers.
Father, I don't know about you, but I'm
attention
really
to the
interested.
podcast. Keep it running. Keep the gears going. Joe,
Tell
there's
me.
been some news. Has there not been?
Oh, I think I'd love to hear this news. What did you tell
We've
everyone?
got to crack the news. It's fresh news, fresh off the press. Brand new news. You heard it first on Sunday Night Live from Melbourne. Hit him with it, Joe. What is it?
Am I telling you? Brendan, I really want you to say
You're
it.
breaking the news.
I'm breaking the news?
You're breaking the news.
I want you to break the news. All right, I'll break the news.
Can you guys get it together, please? This is quite embarrassing.
Okay, so
on,
Father
mate.
Nicholas
News.
Pierce.
He's got to read it off a sheet of paper. He's breaking the news. He doesn't even know what he's breaking.
Father Nicholas Pierce is the new senior chaplain of
Senor. I like the
Senor
Spanish. The Spanish.
of the Diocese of Melbourne, and he's the new chaplain of Melbourne Uni, I believe.
Yeah,
Uni.
it's wonderful news for all of us.
Wow!
Isn't
Congratulations!
Good news. It took us a while to get there, but we're there.
It is.
I want the combox just absolutely lit up with congratulations for Father
What a
Piers.
shame that this wonderful sort of groundbreaking news is being shared on a night where we've lost most of our viewers because the internet is so poor.
Hey, but for those of you who stayed and are listening, you heard it first on Sunday Night Live, and so thanks for sticking around.
You did. There's someone laughing in the background. I don't know who that was, but
that was me looking back over and Joe laughing at the perfect time.
okay. So yeah, for all fun and games, what are we talking about here, Brendan?
Sorry,
Yes.
Any idea what we're actually talking? Why are we talking about this again?
why we're talking about? Oh, because it's wonderful news.
It is wonderful
It
news.
is wonderful news.
And
And
So,
that's
yeah.
why.
we wanted to wish you congratulations,
Thanks
buddy.
very much.
Yeah,
So,
congrats, Father. No, really, like I wouldn't have picked any other priest to be fulfilling this role. So I'm very excited for the future of Melbourne and the future of you. So
I'm really glad, and my complete embarrassment is hidden by the fact that I am trying to still put a live podcast together as we're going because
Perfect. See,
the
no,
computer absolutely crashed. So whilst we actually have some internet stream and we still hopefully have 1 or 2 viewers, Brendan, do you want to launch straight into your top 5 for this week?
We'll launch into it, and don't worry, the podcast is going to be on fire. We've got a good guest on tonight, and I'm looking forward to having him join us. But before then, the top 5 for this week.
Drum roll.
Enter graphic of Brendan's top 5,
Which
and
we still haven't done yet.
logo
because
and
I think if we add one more graphic to this poor podcast, we're never going to see it again. So.
all right, the top 5
Here we go.
animations, like animation movies.
Right, here we go. Brendan's top 5. And
All right.
as it is normally, the 5 to 4 in no particular order. So number
5 to
5.
Number 5 is The Incredibles.
Oh,
Come
good
on.
choice, mate. Yeah, good
Look,
choice.
some people are going to be upset that it's not higher up, and I feel like for some reason it's a little bit contentious. Some people love it and some people don't. But I think it's thebomb.com.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay,
What gives?
The Incredibles. And
Yeah.
what's the...
If you
Sorry.
are watching us live on YouTube tonight, make sure you do drop your suggestions into the com box for the 3.5 people who have stuck with us this long.
No, that's all right. They're finding us still. Just
Yes.
guys, remember, when you want to find us, you need to go to youtube.com/melbournepraise/live, and you're going to catch us
It's the
every
same
time.
Every time, no matter
same
how many
every time.
times we fall off the internet, we're gonna keep
Right.
coming back to you. Okay, number 5, The Incredibles. Number 4,
Number 4 is Wall-E.
Ooh.
haven't seen it.
Haven't you seen it? It's
No,
a
it's
beautiful film. It's about a little robot who's packing up and cleaning up Earth. Meanwhile, humans are all getting shipped off to Planet X. But while they're getting shipped off, their lives have been created that are too wonderful, and they're all just really overweight and sitting in chairs and not living their life. They're living their lives through a screen.
It's like COVID. Sort of,
Basically, guys, watch Wall-E if you want the moral of the story.
they get shipped off to COVID land. Okay, number 4 is Wall-E. Okay, number 3.
Number 3 is I'm trying to think of how to King of Maba Inga Dababala. Anyone? Lion King?
Yeah.
Sorry, you didn't get that. That was the Lion King.
Which one? The original or?
Oh, the original. Oh, but hey, the new one, I really liked it. I was a fan.
Okay.
I thought that it was really funny. But yeah, no, the original Lion King. That's number 3, an
Okay.
absolute classic. And there is a meme out there at the moment that it's like, and that place over there, you must never go there, Simba. And that's if it's 5 kilometers away.
Ah, sorry, I thought that was Wyndham. that was your
Oh,
suburb, wasn't it?
yeah.
Your postcode. That was the
my-
meme. That was the meme that I saw.
Oh yeah, no. If you live in wherever, you don't hear that. Yeah, no.
Okay, number 3, Lion
Um,
King. I reckon you're gonna have a bit of disappointment there because I think people might have put that pretty high.
Well, number 3 is still pretty high. Number 2 is How to Train Your Dragon.
Haven't seen
Wow.
Oh, Father, what's going on? You're rather
it. Okay.
So I'll leave that with you. You need to make sure he watches that. Excellent
Yeah.
movie. And the soundtrack of that is actually phenomenal as well. It's a really good soundtrack. Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
here you
enough
go.
said. It's Training Dragons. Come on. It's everything.
Okay, How to Train Your Dragon is number
Number
4.
Two.
No?
Is number
2.
2.
So Lucky
number 1.
Last.
Okay. It's Coco.
I've seen it. I saw it on a plane.
Wait,
Oh, no.
what? Is that the name of the film?
Coco. Haven't you seen that either, Joe?
No, I've
on.
never even heard of it.
No,
I put
I've
it in
seen-
my drink.
I have
no, no.
seen Coco.
Oh, yeah, but on a plane. I mean, really, everyone knows that they watch the movies they don't really want to appreciate on a plane.
No, see, sort of cartoons and sort of children's movies are the only movies I can ever get really stuck into on a plane.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's when I catch up on all my animation, but also they're a bit of take your brain out and put it on the seat beside you kind of thing. So I have seen Coco.
Actually, it's quite engaging for the mind, especially Coco. I'm rather offended, Father. Jerry said Coco is majestic, and I would agree. It's a very beautiful film, and I think the focus on the emphasis on the family and how important family is, and the music is beautiful, and it re-inspired me to continue learning the guitar. So,
Oh, wonderful! Yeah,
Nice.
I do actually think the emphasis on the family is very nice in that, and that whole idea of keeping the memory alive is
Praying
quite
for
a
the
beautiful
dead
thing.
as
Praying
well.
for the dead. So, Emily was just asking, is Coco what you put in your drink? That's 2 of your top 5s now that have had cocoa in them, because in hot drinks, cocoa was pretty high up there in your beverages top 5 as well. So,
yep.
Joe Malum, favorite animated film of all time?
Oh my goodness, that is.
That's a
It'd
good
have to be
question.
Aladdin. I'd have to represent my people.
Ah, yeah, there you go.
I can show you the
Brendan.
world. Magic carpet.
I can't believe I forgot Aladdin.
I
That's
was surprised.
shocking.
Yeah, I was surprised you didn't say it, man.
Oh no, I change it all. I take it away. I'm removing definitely no, How to Train Your Dragon, scratch that, move it all down. Aladdin is my second favorite for sure.
Although I must admit, I haven't seen the new movie. Has anyone seen it? Like the
No, I
live
have.
action?
No, it's really good. Will Smith
Is it? Okay.
does a good job.
He
Hey,
does a good
no
job.
one can replace Robin Williams, but
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so I have 2.
yes, it is with it.
In second place, it would have to be the Simpsons movie.
Nice.
Yeah,
Good
okay,
choice.
that's pretty good.
In the sense that it actually, like, it delivered. It delivered exactly on what it was meant to do, and it was very engaging. So I enjoyed the Simpsons movie. And number 1 though, and this is going to show my age and my generation as a senior, and that is Toy Story 3.
Nice.
The
Number
third
3.
one?
Number
Yeah.
3.
It's an
More than
interesting
number
choice.
1.
Yeah, the best of all of them.
You reckon?
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And it's because, and I'm probably just
go.
a little bit older than what it was, but there was this real phenomenon of people who went to see it, who had grown up in the period of time in which Andy had grown up. And so
And that-
no, I'm just a bit older than that, but I'm old enough
Sorry, I
to...
wasn't going to assume, but that's I would have thought. But that's good if you can connect with the youth, Father. No, I'm with that. Hey, I
Sorry,
like.
your
I like
your
Toy
voice
Story.
just broke, so... how young are you?
Sorry, that's wrong. It's about you, Father. No, good. Toy Story 3. Jerry said Toy Story 3 was a tearjerker, and I
Yeah,
have to.
thank you, Jerry. Thank you. And quite scary in parts. The big bear and the crushing device and things like that.
It was basically hell. Like it was like hell for toys.
Oh yeah, that scene.
Like,
Yeah,
like
that was-
really, like that's pretty intense.
It is. It is. So there we go. That's Brendan's top 5 for this week. So very
There we are.
Grateful for that. We're running a little bit behind time, which is a real shame because this week's gospel is my favourite passage of the scriptures of all the passages, and we looked at it when we looked at your top 5 scripture passages, and it's the account of Jesus and Peter walking on the water. So we won't have as much time to jump into it as we have in the past, but I do just really encourage people to, if you didn't get to Mass today, which most of you wouldn't have, to really to spend some time in the week ahead on today's Gospel. It's a real beautiful one about faith and about trusting in the Lord, and quite often that the Lord asks us to get out of the boat and to do something courageous with our lives. And that actually means that we have to take the first step most of the time, like Peter did. He had to not listen to the voice of the others in the boat with him who were sort of saying, don't you dare get out of the boat. And he didn't have to look at the depths of the water or the wind or the coldness of the night, but he trusted in the Lord, and he swung his legs out of the boat, which of course is something that our guest tonight is going to do. So there's no better segue than to welcoming our guest tonight, who's joining us all the way from the northern corner of Tasmania.
I love Tasmania, by the way. Great place.
Known to many of you here, but it's Sam Clear. So Sam, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and for putting up with our technological issues that have been going along. How you going, mate?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Yeah, when you first started, your camera was nice and centered, and right now all I'm looking at is your desk.
Oh, really?
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows?
Sam,
the internet can see it, so we're not.
May have zoomed in at my end. No, I'm in a very different world. I'm on the other side of Bass Strait, but might as well be on the other side of the world because we don't have any restrictions really. So I've been to Mass this evening. I can drive where I want, and I still haven't worn a mask.
Yes.
Very, very different. And it snowed here this week.
Snow?
Yeah, Launceston had 4 inches of snow. So it was a winter wonderland. I had an hour and a half spare, and I grabbed my snowboard and drove as fast as was appropriate into the mountains behind the farm here, and found a couple of very quick runs and jumped back in the car and went back to work.
So we're going to come back to rural life in Tasmania soon enough, but we were talking a little bit earlier that it was the feast of Mary Mackillop this last weekend, and I suppose one of her most famous quotes is never see a need without doing something about it, and it's probably a good quote to use about you, Sam, because I suppose I first met you when you just got back from doing this great walk around the world, and I don't think I quite understood why this crazy guy had done this great walk to start with, but you're a man who's got a great passion for unity and unity amongst the churches. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of that walk for people who might not have heard your story before, but also just how you sort of decided that this was something you were going to do to sort of serve a need in the church?
Well, I think most of us grow up knowing about the various denominations and ecclesial movements, and to be honest, growing up, disunity, I just didn't care. They do what they do, and I've got my own issues to deal with. I then did a number of years of youth ministry work with Youth Mission Team Australia, and in that time became, I guess, acutely aware of the disunity of the church when I was being asked to leave meetings because they found out that I was a Catholic. And there was a guy at university who found out I studied mechanical engineering, and one of my fellow students discovered that I was a Catholic, and so continued to try and evangelize me, in his words, to become a Christian. And the more that I said, no, I am a Christian, the more he would go, no, well, you're Catholic, you're not. And what he actually did in time, though, was instead of convincing me to join his particular church, he actually made me more Catholic, because the more I looked at his arguments, the more I actually learnt. And in the end, we had these debates going back and forwards, but I was all of a sudden very interested in, so what do other churches teach? And I guess the line I went down to start with was that I wanted to learn more so that I could argue better. And in time, I realised that all that happened was that the arguments became more heated. It wasn't actually producing good fruit. And I read the story. Some of you may be aware of a guy called Tim Staples, who was a Baptist evangelical who became a Catholic. And I read his story. I was living in Melbourne at the time. I lived in Burwood, actually Box Hill South, technically. And I read his story and was blown away by the fact that he lost his friends and family. His mum was distraught, feeling that her son had disowned God, and his girlfriend broke up with him. Now, as it turns out, both of them ended up being on side eventually. But I remember reading that and being really confronted, and just, it was a moment of helplessness. I didn't want to fight anymore. I just had this moment of, how has it got to this point? The church is broken, and there are a lot of churches still in protest against the Catholic Church or the Orthodox churches, but even the Catholics and the Orthodox have their disagreements. And that there is great diversity within the church, but that does not equal disunity. Disunity is a whole different kettle of fish. I was going to St. Dominic's in Camberwell at the time. Looks like Mordor, should be in Lord of the Rings. But I went along to weekday mass one day and got there early, so prayed a quick prayer before mass. And what I prayed was, dear God, I'd love to help you, but I'm sorry, mate, you're on your own. I'm out. The problem's too big. I can't fix this. There's nothing I can do to help this. Father, I wasn't intent at that point on becoming a priest, so there was no great intention of studying theology or philosophy. And I just kind of figured in that moment that I'm out. I can't help this. And particularly when we think about the unity of the church, Jesus prays for the unity of the church in the Gospel of John. We hear about his longest prayer, John 17. He prays for the complete unity of the church, and he gives a reason why. That those outside the church, when they look at our unity, they would see God's love being witnessed. It's John 17:23. And I just felt like, well, there's nothing I can do to help at this point. And in the silence that followed, it just felt as though God was saying, Sam, you're right, you can't fix this, but I can. Pray. And so that was the thing that I started to do, was I started to actually just pray for unity, which, funnily enough, I hadn't been doing. I'd been trying to do all these other things. I'd been reading, I'd been learning and striking up conversations in order to get into arguments with people. And then eventually started to pray for unity. And one thing led to another. My two great loves collided. My love of adventure. I live in central Tassie. I love adventure. And my other love, being Jesus. And eventually decided to sell everything that I owned and to walk around the world praying for unity and stop at every single church I pass, regardless of denomination, and invite them just to at least pray for each other. So try to avoid an argument, just invite them to at least pray for each other, and to encourage Christians to pray for complete unity in truth and in love. So that was the background.
Sam, we're here in the Gospel this weekend about the Lord sort of asking Peter to do something that everybody else would have thought was impossible. And it sounds a little bit like that's what he asked you to do in starting this walk around the world. Did you face some opposition, sort of people from your own family or friends who might have thought you were crazy? And any advice for someone who's dreaming about doing something big and dramatic for the Lord, and how you can face that?
Here's the big thing. I really wanted to do this because I loved adventure, and I was looking at maps, but I think even St. Peter says, Lord, call me. As in, I actually want to step out, but his faith's a bit weak. Yes, I did. When I told my mum and dad, I flew back to Tassie and informed mum and dad what my decision was, what I was going to do. Mum, the very first words out of her mouth were, I always suspected you'd end up doing something as stupid as this. And Dad wasn't too far off that either. Dad was a little more practical. Dad did say to me, well, it's a long way. You better do your research and get some good gear. and then most of my friends were supportive, but I've got to admit, most of my friends were I'd worked in ministry with in some shape or form, and they thought it was crazy in a good way. The really difficult thing, and it still is difficult now, 10 years down the track, is to explain to people why I did it. I'm living here on the farm, and we get shearers in to shear the 3,000 merinos we've got, and it's a bit awkward explaining to the shearers why I did the walk around the world. It's easy to explain it to a Christian because you can just straight away point to John 17:23 and they get it. To a non-Christian, it just feels awkward. Actually, Father, where did you go to school?
Aquinas College here.
It was good. I thought it was. At Aquinas College this year, I gave a speaking engagement, and a student at the end of the talk put his hand up and said, "I don't mean to be rude, but what was the point of your walk?" He said, "I don't get it." And some of the students had a look on their face of, "Are you serious?" Like they obviously got it and understood, but a lot of people just don't understand it. And it turned out, we had a good chat, this guy in Q&A, and it turns out, he's an atheist, doesn't believe in God. And at that level, it doesn't make sense to pray for unity. And I think this is the really important thing, is if we're following God and following God's call in our life, for those who are already following God, they're usually going to be pretty supportive. But for those who aren't, it's going to look like absolute nonsense. It's not going to make sense. Why would you give money to people who don't deserve it? Or why would you sacrifice? But you get these different definitions of love where, one definition is it's all about me. And then there's the Catholic definition of love where it is sacrificial. And that can just seem a bit absurd to those around us. And I think the one thing I'd say, Father, is that as we deepen our relationship with Christ, we intrinsically learn to trust God. And I think it's really important that we lean on that trust and not on I think the really big danger is that we do fall into the trap of wanting more likes on social media. We want to be esteemed. Actually, on the walk around the world, I prayed a particular prayer, which was a derivative of a prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. But the prayer was, "Lord, save me from the desire to be esteemed." Because I was trying to get people to pray for unity. And if there was big media coverage in countries, that helped. But then there's that desire sets in to actually want media coverage. And you want to be esteemed. And if anything, I had to be sat back down on my backside at times with some pretty horrid encounters. And some of them that weren't so horrid, but they were just, they were palm-offs. People didn't care. People just laughing at the extent that I was going just to invite people to pray for unity. But if we keep our focus on the Lord, and it does come back to the gospel of Jesus inviting Peter to step out of the boat. If we keep our focus on the Lord and don't look down or don't look around at what the disciples are doing or whatever it might be, then that's the only way, is our focus on Jesus.
Sam, we're obviously still in lockdown here, and quite, I suppose, serious lockdown here in Melbourne. And it's, I suppose, the second round for most of the young people that I'd be listening tonight. You would have spent a lot of time on your own as part of your walk, a lot of time in solitude, and a lot of time, I suppose, against your own will sometimes on your own. Have you got any advice for any of the young people who might be struggling a little bit with that, all this time that they're finding on their own, and that inability to sort of be around? For some people, it's a blessing for people who are introverts, but for the extroverts, it can be a bit of a struggle. Any advice?
Yeah, and it's not so. The advice I'm going to give isn't specific to that loneliness that we feel. I'll get to that. The first thing I'd say though is that, particularly on the walk around the world, which is 15,500 kilometres over 19 months, and the majority of that I was by myself. No mobile phone. This is 10 years ago. You couldn't take your mobile phone overseas without getting a new SIM card, and I had to get a new one for every country. A lot of things happened that I didn't like. In fact, I nearly died 11 times. And initially, there was a very strong visceral reaction from me when bad stuff happened. And in the end, I had to realize that I can't stop bad things happening. What I actually have a decision over is how I choose to respond to what is happening. And I tell the story often in schools about a pig in Mexico that was trying to eat through my backpack to get to the food. And my initial reaction was actually to punch the pig, to stop it eating the backpack. And I thought, I don't want to punch the pig. I didn't actually do it, just for the listeners. I didn't punch it. But it was the first thing that went through my mind. And then thought, well, there's got to be another way that I can stop this angry, aggressive pig eating through my backpack, which is on the ground, by the way. It wasn't on my back. And so in the end, I figured, okay, I'll try and befriend the pig. So I actually flicked it some food. I scratched it behind the ear, and I didn't know that pigs have a sensitive spot behind their ear, and I hit it. And it gave this involuntary convulsion and flopped down on the ground. And I was in the middle of nowhere, so I just started to massage this pig, and I'm talking to it gently, and it actually fell asleep. And I was able to walk on with my backpack. Now, the point is, for the pig, if I'd punched it in the head, as opposed to giving it a biscuit and a massage, it would have been a very different experience. And yet, for me, I got the same end result. I got my backpack back. And I might have been justified to punch the pig to get my backpack back, but there are different ways of dealing with it. So point is, our initial reaction, acknowledge it for what it is, but you've got a choice of how you respond. And this became a very big part of the journey. When I was on 3 occasions held at gunpoint. And what I actually found was that the best thing I could do was actually smile at the person. It was very disarming, almost literally, to smile at the person and start to talk to them. They didn't like it. And hence I've got the photograph of one of the guys with his shotgun. He posed about 5 minutes later. We had a good conversation. And the loneliness side of it, which is a very particular part, I'll be honest, I've got to be real about this. I think that loneliness is one of the worst conditions we can experience. The physical stuff that I went through on the journey, I had surgery without anaesthetic. They ripped my big toenail out with pliers without anaesthetic, right? And there's more to it. I won't get into that. But loneliness is worse. I think we've got to be real about that. And we have to actually actively ensure, we've got to change our habits. We've got to pick up our phone and actually call people. Don't just go on social media. Give people a call, chat, get the conversation going. This sort of thing's great. This kind of setup where you are engaging with people. You're not just sitting there watching YouTube. At least with this, hopefully you're learning something, but at the same time you can actually engage with each other. For the listeners who have actually stayed on.
Exactly, and just on that, so if you are still with us live, and some of you are, make sure if you've got any questions for Sam, you drop them into the com box here on YouTube.
Sam, since returning from your trip, you've been gone into full-time lay ministry, and I suppose I'm in lay ministry at the moment, and so is Brendan. We're both youth ministers. I guess, do you have any advice for young Catholic men or women who are dreaming of serving the Lord in the church in lay ministry, or people who have crazy dreams that want to fulfill them at the minute?
Yep. So the first one actually ties in with what I should have said for my last answer, being that the beautiful thing about being alone is the silence, and prayer just feasts on silence. We find God in the silence of our lives. So that's a great thing for this lockdown time, is to actually pray. But the same thing goes for anyone who wants to go into, whether it be lay ministry or into consecrated life, is to pray and spend more and more time in prayer. The other thing too is, I'd say, be careful not to force what we think should happen in ministry. I have often met people who say, "Oh, I want to be a lay minister like you, want to do public speaking like you do." And I'll always, it's just, for me, it's a natural question to ask, "Oh, what would you speak on?" And they'll often say, I don't know. And for me, that's all backwards. And all I do in lay ministry, I'm not a theologian or a philosopher. I'm merely sharing my own experience. That's it. In particular, I'm sharing about the way in which my faith grew, my trust in God grew, and the actual moments along the way, but also a few things like the pig story, things I learned about communication and how I react to situations. But don't try and force into a mold of what you want to be. I think it is very important we do pray that prayer of, Lord, save me from the desire to be esteemed, or save me from the desire to be loved by others, but in that kind of almost greedy way of we want people to love us in a spectacular way rather than serving others. So always make sure your focus is on serving those around you and how can we best serve them.
One of the things that you obviously spend a lot of time sharing, in particular in your work in our schools, but in all of your work, is about your personal relationship with the Lord, if you know what I mean, and this idea of the proclamation of the gospel starts with us sharing about our own relationship with the Lord. Have you got any tips for anyone who might, especially obviously in this time, whether it's through social media or with their immediate family or friends, any tips on how we can do that well? Sort of what's a really good sort of starting point to sort of...
It's honestly, it's always easier to share if the other person has asked a question. And they're only going to ask the question if they see that you are actually living your life in a way. And this is actually I'll say this. This is one of the things I actually love about a priest wearing a collar, is that it's visible to everyone who you are. And I don't know if this has happened to you, Father, but I'm going to guess that you've had random people come up to you and just ask questions because they can see you're a priest. Has that actually happened, or am I off target here?
It does, in particular in sort of airports or sort of places where you end up getting stuck next to a person and you can't escape. So it obviously it's a little bit of a challenge sometimes.
When you're on a flight to do another Camino.
Yeah.
And they ask you, yeah. So similar thing. It's not that it has to be that we wear jewelry that says we are Christian, but certainly through our actions. Sometimes it's through what we do, and sometimes it's through what we don't do or what we don't participate in. That then can prompt a question. So the first thing I'd say is live it. Actually live your Christian faith. And in doing that, it often will, and this is the beautiful thing for me, is that I did 5 years of youth ministry before the walk around the world. Then having done the walk, it's the best platform because people ask questions, and even atheists are more than willing to listen to the why. It's the greatest thing to finish a talk at a school and have a student come up and say, I'm an atheist, but now I'm not really sure. It's great. You're just given an opportunity to share your own experience. I think the difficulty is, and this is the trap I fell into before the walk, was that I tried to point out, and this was to Christians, but I was trying to point out to them why I thought they were wrong. And we can often do that with people who are atheist or agnostic. We want to tell them what we think is wrong, instead of sharing with them what is right and what is love, and actually witnessing that. So I think it's actually a harder path though, to live an extraordinarily loving, joyful life that actually prompts people to want to ask questions of why are you like this? I want to know.
Wow.
Is that okay as an answer?
That's a great answer. St. Paul's great thing of give the reason for the joy that is within you. So
yes, yeah.
How did that start for you, Sam?
Sorry?
What ignited that for you in the beginning? What kind of ignited that passion to want to share with others?
Yeah, so look, I grew up Catholic, and I grew up on Flinders Island out in Bass Strait, and we didn't have a priest. So we would fly a priest in once a month, and he'd consecrate enough hosts. for us to have a service on the other Sundays. We had 2 presentation sisters who would take us for Sunday school. And we only had one state school on the island, so they took us for Sunday school. And what they did was, at a basic level, was instilling me faith. 14 years of age, I had a really bad accident, which is pretty normal for me, but it nearly killed me, and I had my last rites read to me. It happened on a Saturday. On the Wednesday, they did think I was going to die that night, and so I got to say goodbye to my family. And I put it down to the intercession of Our Lady. I only knew 4 prayers. One of them was a Hail Mary. And for the first time, the conclusion of that prayer, pray for us now at the hour of our death, meant something. And I can't explain this, but for the first time in my life, I experienced God's love. I felt that I actually believed that God did love me. And I've got to be honest, I was disappointed the next day when I hadn't died. I was actually kind of looking forward to it. I got to this moment of God loves me, and this is awesome. Anyway, that was a big changing point. The really big change, though, where it went from I believe God loves me to actually pursuing God, was at university. I met a guy at uni who was the first Catholic I'd ever met who actually lived his faith and actually loved the church. And most Catholics I knew kind of hated the church or thought it needed to change, and that's all they spoke about. And this guy went to mass every morning before uni. He prayed all the time. He loved the rosary, and I'd never prayed the rosary. His dad is now a married deacon. He was married, obviously, at the time, but he's now a deacon. And he was studying, and his mum had in her kitchen, she's Italian, his mum, and she had a big poster of Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger in the kitchen. And I asked her, who's he? And she told me who Cardinal Ratzinger was. I cannot tell you how excited she was when he was made Pope. And a new poster went up alongside him. Another one of Pope Benedict XVI. And any time he brought out an encyclical, I was handed the encyclical to read. But the beautiful thing was that I was invited into their home multiple times every week to sit around their dinner table, share a meal, and ask hard questions. And for the first time in my life, I had people who could give me great answers. Right, it's exactly what you guys are doing here. I know you can't be around a dinner table at the moment, which is pretty awful, but you can at least rendezvous like this, which is pretty cool.
When the internet works.
That was what changed for me, was having that. Did you like that quick plug?
Yeah.
That's what changed for me, was that I was able to ask the hard questions, and it was in an environment where I didn't feel like I had to say the right thing, and I asked the hard questions that I knew would almost put me on the outer as far as what they believed. But I got to ask them, but why? And the beautiful thing is that the parish priest in our parish down there in Hobart, where I was living at the time at university, would be at their house every Sunday night for dinner as well. And so Father John Wall, God rest his soul, would give us fantastic, solid answers. And then Nick and Joe, my best mate's parents, would give amazing answers as well. And that was a really significant change. And then we did a Bible study, a 7-week Bible study. And I've got to admit, what they call baptism in the Holy Spirit was massive for me. And even though I don't associate with a charismatic group. In fact, I went to a Latin mass this evening. It really was that baptism in the Holy Spirit. And actually, if anything, the scriptures came alive at that point. And I still have a very strong link with the Disciples of Jesus community. Anyway, we could get off target here.
We'll bring you back another week, but Sam, we're almost out of time. We've been asking all of our guests over the last 15 weeks now, sort of what they learn about themselves during lockdown, And you're obviously a very busy
But I'm
person.
lucky to live in Tasmania.
Well, you're out of lockdown, but I suppose that first lockdown, but you're, again, one of the a very busy person.
We didn't.
You didn't get locked down at all.
We just locked you out. We had a lockout.
But I suppose your plans for this year changed dramatically. How many schools would you normally be visiting on a yearly basis?
I would normally be visiting 120 to 140.
Yeah.
And so far, I've had about 40 cancellations.
Yeah.
And they happen to have been some of my biggest for the. Let's put it this way, as in it's not that I've lost $30,000.
Yeah.
You know, it's massive.
So has there been anything that you've learned about yourself, though, that you're sort of a silver lining, I suppose, amongst all of the changes and turmoil of 2020?
Yeah, I love being on the farm. I've actually had time to. I normally travel all the time. In fact, last year I spent 142 nights away from home on the road, and I have absolutely loved being able to get a routine. I'm actually building relationships with parishioners that I hadn't previously. I have a lot more time for prayer. I have learnt to pray. Hang on one second while I get rid of all this other stuff off my phone. If I bring this up, I've learnt to pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet, which
A great plug there.
Sorry?
And the plug to Melbourne Praise would be great at this point.
And Melbourne Praise, I learnt, is just fantastic. What is it? So what I have learnt in this time is that I was so focused on the youth, on the ministry that I was involved in, the lay ministry, that I was actually neglecting other areas of my life. And so a big part of that has been prayer, but actually just talking with God in a way that I hadn't previously. And also my parish. I'd neglected my parish in a way, and the parishioners. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight and persevering through some of the technical issues. You're doing great work for the church, and we continue to pray for you and for your great mission, and to carry on that important work that you started all those years ago of praying for the unity of the churches throughout the world. So thank you very much for being with us and for your inspiring words this evening.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me along, and well done on actually persevering with this. It's great.
Persevering is the word. Thanks very much, Sam. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a eventful evening. We're going, but it's going to be an even more eventful week. So I really think that the technological issues, we've got all the bugs out of the system now, because the rest of the week is going to be jam-packed full of some greatness. So Brendan, what are you doing on Wednesday night?
Wednesday night, there is a big event happening. We've got the Acyf Reunion for Melbourne happening right here, live on the Archdiocese. Guys, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Melbourne Archdiocese YouTube channel, because that's where the Acyf Reunion is happening. It's happening right where Father Nick is, in that location with that beautiful backdrop.
But beaming out to a different YouTube channel. But a great event for the 1,000+ pilgrims who went across to ACYF at the end of last year. And even if you didn't go, it'll be a great night of faith and prayer. So that's Wednesday night.
Join
New
us.
time, starting at 5 p.m, just so that Brendan can get back in time for the curfew. So that's Wednesday night. Joe, what are you doing Thursday night?
Oh, Thursday night, we got Thursday Night Praise. Last week we had Genevieve Bryant on. Thank you, Genevieve, for coming. But this week we got is it me and you, Padre,
I
this
think
week?
we're back on. The A-team is back on together.
There we go.
So Thursday night at 6:30 here on the Melbourne Praise channel. But also, as Sam Clear so obviously didn't understand, every day at 12 midday and at 3 p.m. we gather to pray here live on Melbourne Praise. So the Angelus and Rosary at 12 and the Divine Mercy Chaplet live at 3 p.m. And although it's Melbourne Praise, even our friends from Tasmania can join us So that's every day. So please make sure you tune in for that. Next Sunday is going to be a really big show, and I'm really quite excited about it. We're putting Brendan on the bench for a week. It's the 20th anniversary of World Youth Day in Rome. And many of you who are listening tonight will have been to a World Youth Day over the last 20 years. But 20 years ago, the Great Jubilee year was the first year really that World Youth Day was celebrated on a large scale here in the Archdiocese of Melbourne. Pilgrims had been sent to Paris a few years earlier, but the Jubilee year of 2000 was a really big year with pilgrims from all over the diocese being sent. And ever since then, World Youth Day has been a staple part of the church here and the life of the church in Melbourne. So we're gonna get together next Sunday night with Steve Lawrence, who was around 20 years ago as one of the leaders. And we're going to have a look not just at World Youth Day Rome, but we're going to have a bit of a sweeping view at all of the World Youth Days since then up until now. So if you've been to a World Youth Day, make sure you put on your pilgrim t-shirt and join in for that great night. We do have a really special guest who's coming on, who's not going to be worth not missing for. So more information about that coming up soon. But make sure you tune in next Sunday night for that special Sunday Night Live as we celebrate the great gift to the church that World Youth Days have been. But otherwise, if you haven't already, make sure you download the podcasts. We only put the complete episodes up, so all those false attempts at the start of the thing won't be there. So if you want to listen back or share tonight's podcast, you can get it from Google and the Apple Store. And also make sure you find us at facebook.com/Melbourne Praise and like our page there. But otherwise, thanks very much, Brendan. Good luck on Wednesday night. Hopefully it goes all well. But otherwise, we'll see you all during the week.
It's been good. Another good one, Father. I'll speak next week.
It's been real. God bless.
God bless.
See you, Brendan.
See you, Joe.